Let's respect everybody's time and let's start. And thank you, everybody who is attending. I see some new names here and some people who have attended before. So, as Emily said, there will be some repetition, so you will not miss anything. And I would like to welcome Emilie Jackson again to tell us more about the history of tea. Welcome, Emily.
Hello and welcome everyone. Happy to be here again. So today we're going to talk more about the health benefits of tea and tea rituals. So that's one of my favorite class. There are a few repetitions, but you'll understand why, because it's important to understand actually how this really impact the health, our health when we drink tea. So I'm going to share my computer again. So we can and hopefully this time it works. So one thing we talked in probably the history class and maybe last time as well is that there's many legends that talk about where tea come from, how old it is, and some of the health benefits why in history people has drank tea, and the most commonly known is that it was actually really helpful for digestion. What's interesting, and if you look at really old legends, that whether it come from China, like from the Chinese Emperor Shennong, or it come India, from India, where you have and Japan, we both it's always going back to China. And the most interesting thing about it when it comes to health benefits is that whether it's the Emperor Shennong that used it to help digestion and actually recorded in his library of plants that he was actually experimenting and trying for the health benefits, or if it's in India and Japan, where they talk about the Prince Bodhidharma having used it to try to stay awake in his meditation, there is always a common denominator of how tea has been used in so many countries now to help for health and wellness. And it's really those three things, which is, health in general, like alertness, but also the refreshing aspect. If you think about a lot of people in really hot countries, like in Arabic countries, they will drink tea because it helps quench their thirst. There is also I would say a chemical effect because it makes sweating, and then you actually refresh. In some ways, you get cooler. And there's a meditative aspect, which we're going to talk about. So if you look really all around the world, how the tea plant has been used, you always have those kind of main three factors, which I think is interesting. And why I took the name of this presentation, The Health Benefits of Tea and Tea Ritual, because there is something really interesting, especially when you prepare loose leaf tea, is that how even the way you're going to prepare it and how present you're going to be, that's going to affect your mental health as well. So that's what also I love about tea. There is more into it than just ingesting the tea leaf. The other thing that I also, and that's why I go back to history again, it's how you prepare it. And over time and in the different dynasty, the way they prepare tea has evolved and changed. What's really interesting about that is how actually some countries kept maybe the Song dynasty preparation. Some have used it like more like the Tang dynasty or like the Ming dynasty. So if I go back to those three, just to explain you a little bit how it was. So the boiling part, so basically think about preparing your tea over the stove. and we talked about that in the last presentation. The size of the bubbles will tell you which temperature will be good for to stop to heat the water, depending on which tea you're using. And we talked about that in our class before, but I will review it a little bit. Is each tea, ideally you want to steep it differently so that you get the most of their health benefits and the taste as well. Also, tea is a plant, as I mentioned before, and as I'm, kind of in training herbalist, each plant have health benefits, and if you do an infusion versus a decoction, you will get different also compounds that you extract from the water itself and from the herbs, I mean. So if you boil it, there is different way. There is a short steep, or there is even longer steeps that maybe you'll get more astringency, but can be good for certain elements. Now, you see, during the Song Dynasty, they were doing more like grinding the tea leaf. If you think about in Japan and the matcha, the shanoyu ceremony, or where they actually prepare matcha, this is basically that. So this is not typical to Japan. China has done it before, and they still do it for certain teas. When you do that, you actually are eating the leaves, so you will get more compounds and more health benefit from the plant as well. But you also get more caffeine, and we talked about that last time too, and I will explain a bit more later in the health part. And then there is the Ming Dynasty, which is basically the steeping, the way to steep tea. And most often now, if you look all around the world, a lot of people prepare the steeping tea. So in the Western countries, we use, well, actually, exactly what I have here. You see the teapot. But in China, they use the gaiwan, or they use also the yixing pot that I'll show you later. I have a picture of that. So the evolution of preparing the tea, or the way you prepare the tea, will also impact how you extract the very compounds of the tea itself. Going back to what I like about looking at around the world, the cultures with tea, as I mentioned, there is a difference between tea cultivation and tea culture. So tea cultivation is basically all the countries that are able to cultivate tea. And as I mentioned also before, like wine, where it originated and how other countries wanted to learn the know-how and try to actually cultivate it in their countries. That's what's happening with tea, and it's actually ongoing. There are places in Europe now where we're starting to grow tea at much lower scale, and this is not like Asia where you have really big tea plantation and everything like that, but it is happening as well. So why I'm talking about that, and so that's the tea cultivation, right? And then the tea culture, there's about 120 countries that actually have a culture with tea. And mostly what I like when you look all around the world, there's a common denominator. It always includes socialization, some kind of you're with a friend or you're at home, and the first thing that they're gonna do from a culture standpoint is offer you tea. Or there is maybe some ritual behind it. Like here in Japan, for instance, that when those two monks, Saiko and Miyoan, went to China to learn more about Buddhism and everything, they also discovered the tea plant. And they found out that the tea plant had some virtue that helped to stay awake, to stay more alert, and that was helping them during their actually meditation practice. Like Thich Nhat Hanh, for instance, who is a spiritual leader that passed away. He's from Vietnam originally and has his a convent in the south of France, has a whole meditation around tea and tea preparation. And so this is what I like to make you think of, like planting the seed today as I'm teaching you a little bit what's going on around the world or how tea has been used, is how maybe this, you can apply something much more simple for you at home, how you can be inspired by the different way of preparing and find the way that you'd like to do it at home. And I'll give you some tips of doing that, right? Now, I'll go back to what is tea, right? So if you've been in the 2 other classes, you already know that it's from the Camellia Sinensis. That's its Latin name. That mostly when you do tea, often you use the bud and 2 leaves, and sometimes the stems are also used. The flower can be used, but more for a decorative standpoint rather than just really the health part. But I'm sure that adds to the mix. The 6th category of tea, I will go fast here because we already talked about that, but there is the black tea, which is highly oxidized, the oolong, who can be highly oxidized, it's semi-oxidized, sorry, not highly oxidized, semi-oxidized, and his oxidation level can go from 7% to 70, 80%. Then there is a pure tea, which is often oxidized and fermented. Now you have raw and ripe puer, so depending on the process to do it, you'll get different health benefit as well. If you think about if there is fermentation, that means that will help with the microbiome. Some of the studies have shown that for some of the purity is known to help with weight maintenance. Now, I always say, if you do have a poor diet and only eat tea, I don't think that will help as well. So it should be a combination, right? Then green tea is not oxidized. Yellow tea and white tea may have a mild oxidation, but the difference is basically you have 2 different types of oxidation, and I talked about that before. So oxidation is a chemical reaction that happens naturally as tea grows, but mostly occurs during drying and processing. So there's 2 types of oxidation. The passive oxidation is like when you cut an apple, basically, and it's in contact in the air, basically. That's the passive oxidation that generally yellow and white tea can have. And then the controlled oxidation for black, puer, and oolong is like when you really want to make sure you control the oxidation level so it doesn't get too ripe and doesn't get to the taste you want or spoiled, but you get exactly to the type of tea that you want to make. The oxidation level has an impact also on how you will get to extract some compounds of the tea rather than other. And we'll talk about the different nutrients that tea has. And then that was just an idea for you to understand a little bit how the oxidation goes from one type of tea to another, right? Then we talk about the caffeine content, and then I'm going to stop a little bit here because I want to read you. So I've explained that in the past, and I'll give you also even from where I'm getting, I really like this book, but I've always explained that at the end of the day, I was asking to other people, so do you think that the teas that I just talked about, black, green, oolong, has the same amount of caffeine? Yes or no? So some people would say yes, some people would say no. And I said, well, you both are right in some regards, because all those teas are actually processed from the same plant. So technically they have the same amount of caffeine, right? However, it's the way you're going to prepare the tea, depending on the type of tea it is. How high the water is, how long the extraction is going to be, that's where you're going to get really the amount of caffeine or the other amount of nutrient from it, right? If you think about a matcha tea, which is a powdered tea, and generally it's green tea, well, because you're actually ingesting the whole leaf, you'll get more caffeine, but you'll get also much more antioxidant from the plant itself. In fact, originally and still now, tea leaves in in China, because they get to have them fresh, they use it in salads. So they use it like a vegetable, if you will, or like a lettuce. It has a lot of great nutrients, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit here. The one thing I want to just explain regarding the caffeine in coffee and the caffeine in tea is a little bit different. In fact, sometimes I don't know if I could say, don't get me wrong, I get frustrated because here in United States, I don't often hear thein. In France, we actually differentiate the caffeine that is in tea and the caffeine that is in coffee. So in coffee, we could talk about caffeine, and in tea, we talk about thein, Theine. So the truth is why it's kind of used a little bit interchangeably for tea is because the thein and the caffeine are they are the same alkaloid. So it's basically, what is an alkaloid is a class of basic naturally occurring organic compounds that contain at least one nitrogen atoms. And it is used interchangeably because thein and caffeine have somewhat, I would say, the same effect on the body, which is giving you kind of more energy, right? However, the difference between caffeine in coffee and thein in tea, or the caffeine that is in tea, if you prefer, is that how basically in tea, the fact that it's combined with tannin, as you know, I mentioned that before in our the herbs, the tea versus herbs, that tea has tannin, like wine, and tannin has kind of this ability to attenuate and stabilize the effect of the caffeine. So the tannin prevents caffeine from being released rapidly, so it is absorbed over a longer period of time. And if you remember, I kind of simplifies my explanation, saying if you think about coffee, you get a drink of coffee, you have this great spike, and then a few hours later, you have this big crash, right? When in tea, it's different because the caffeine content, because it's kind of controlled with the tannin, it's gonna be released over 6 to 8 hours. That's why you feel that there is this focus and more alertness. And to kind of differentiate the effect of caffeine in coffee versus tea, we said that tea is more a stimulant versus an excitant. I don't know, I hope that helps a little bit understand the difference. I wanted to emphasize a lot in it because we hear a lot about caffeine. It's kind of a buzzer, and in a good way and in a bad way. And I wanted you to understand why in tea, it actually have more, I would say, a positive effect rather than a negative effect. Now, there are people that are much more sensitive to other. And I always say at the end of the day, you have to see what works for you. So I hope that helped a little bit about understanding the caffeine content. I'm going to talk more about the nutrients, but I wanted also to share with you. Earlier, I said in the history part that the health benefits of tea in many cultures have been used for digestive purpose. But there is something else. If you look, I like to take this in the Han Dynasty, there's this quote, so the Chinese had already discovered tea's pharmacological properties. They drank it to counteract fatigue, uplift spirits, fortify willpower, and improve eyesight. And we'll go in detail. I have a little bit more information for that. So we just talked about how it has more of a stimulant, so alertness. So it's going to help with the fatigue aspect. But there is also, in many cultures, a spiritual aspect of it, and it's more into the meditational part and how it's used in different cultures. And if you think about it, I don't know for you, but when I say, oh, I'm going to take time right now, stop what I'm doing and prepare a tea, it's like I'm telling to myself that I'm taking care of me, and I'm just making a little bit of more clarity in my mental, because I'm just gonna focus on preparing my tea and just drinking it. Now, nutrients-wise, and I don't know if you're aware of it, but in tea, so in the tea leaf itself, there is actually 20% of protein. Yes. Now, only 4% of those protein are water soluble. So when you drink it, you're not going to get the most as you will get it if you eat it as a salad, or if you maybe if you're drinking like a matcha. And even with the matcha, because you have the water and it's not soluble, I'm sure it's still much diluted. So maybe instead of having a 4%, you may go up to 6 or 8%. I'll have to double check on this one. The good thing about this beverage that is tea is that if you are trying to control weight or anything like that, and you're also trying to still have water intake or liquid intake in your body, it only has 1 or 2% of calories. So that's the great thing. In addition to the protein part, it also have 20 amino acids, and 50 to 60% of those amino acids are theanine. We talk about that, which is helps with the brain part. And there is also vitamin A, B complex. There is vitamin E, and there is vitamin K, and there's flavonoids. And flavonoids, for some, if you don't know, it's a phytonutrient, and they have beneficial aspect for anti-inflammatory purpose. So, and they protect your cell from oxidative damage that can lead to disease. To add in a little bit, so I go back and forth to more the physical aspect of it and how it helps you. And if you think about inflammation also impacts, your stress level too. Like stress, it's actually it's inflammatory. So tea, in some ways, and I'm gonna give you a little bit example how reducing is gonna help with stress, because tea actually works on two levels, on two systems in our body, the central nervous system and the cardiovascular system. Now, I'm going to tell you in a minute how it does that. But I want to go back to this particular quote that I took from Warren Peltier in the book called The Ancient Art of Tea. It's called The Wonderful Delight That Is Tea is found not just in the tea's collective components of color, aroma, taste, and shape, but it is also the ability of tea to warm the heart, to give us joy and relaxation, to calm us, to purify our minds in the fragrant steam wafting from our cup. When I took this particular quote, what I really liked also, it's something that I tried to explain a bit earlier, but let me explain a little bit better. One thing that I love about tea, if you think about it, is that it involves all the sense. So the olfactive, the eyesight, because generally you're going to look at the brew and you're going to smell the leaves, then you smell the aroma. This also have a positive impact on your mind. It's whether it's conscious or subconscious, but think about if you go to try a tea or to go to a tea room, you're gonna ask, oh, can I smell one or tea? And sometimes people are gonna just pick their tea based on that, because the smell has really a big impact on how you will, and maybe unconsciously it will tell you which type of tea you're gonna need that day, right? So going back to how the tea impact the central nervous system and the cardiovascular system is basically, technically, by enlarging the diameter of the vessels in the cerebral cortex. That's primarily how this gonna make it helpful for those systems. Now, let's go a little bit more in detail on that, because I told you central nervous system, the cardiovascular system, but it also have effect on other area of our body. So digestion, we talked about it, and I will go over a little bit more in detail. We also have an impact for dental health. Okay, so dental health, it's known for preventing cavity. The only downside of tea, and I'm sure you all know, it's because it has tannin, like wine and like other beverage that has tannin, it can darken your teeth, like making yellowish. So sometimes you need some like toothpaste. There are natural toothpaste that have argil that can help with that. Skin beauty. If you think about it, you may have seen like masks with green tea or white tea. It's because there's a lot of antioxidants in those teas, so they help for skin rejuvenation, rejuvenation of the cells. We talked about it earlier. It helps with the nervous system, so helps reduce stress and help focus. Specifically, this in green tea because of the amount of the compound that helps with that. Then we have heart health, and we'll go a little bit further on that. We have brain health, and it's believed to help reduce the risk of degenerative disease like Parkinson's, or for instance. And then the other thing that tea is known for is to help for higher bone density. So if we go to the digestive system part, so as I mentioned, it helps with digestion. It's also known to prevent bloating. There is a tea, Japanese tea, that is green tea with, it's called genmatcha. So it's a green tea with a blend of popped rice. It's actually really good when you feel that you have a stomach ache. So you can have it maybe 30 minutes after eating or something like that. It's tea also is known to soothe your stomach, but it also works as a bitter, right? It has astringency. Some of teas have more astringencies than others, and bitter actually are good for you because they help break down actually food in your as you're digesting. It can help detox the liver. Green and white tea more specifically because of the higher level in antioxidants. For brain health, as I mentioned, the calm and alertness, the L-theanine that I talked a bit earlier before when we talked about nutrients. It's an amino acid that absorbed into the circulatory system, where it increases alpha brainwave activity, known to induce a calmer yet but more alert state of mind. The epigallocatechin gallet is another compound in the tea that may help prevent brain cells degeneration. There have been some studies that shows that it helps preventing some of degenerative disease. Then the polyphenols may also help repair some neurons that have been damaged. There is also some studies, more and more studies, that talk about how tea can help prevent some kind of cancer. Now, I don't have much today to share, but there is a few studies, even a whole book that have been dedicated about tea and cancer. Heart health. This one, I will just give a disclaimer on this one particularly, but still, overall, like I explained a little bit before and how it acts on the cardiovascular system, tea seems to have direct impact on the nervous system. Therefore, on reducing stress level, which by domino effect can also help the risk of heart attack or stroke. One thing though, if you or someone in your family have arrhythmia, you want to make sure you limit to drink a cup, go up to 3 cups of tea, but no more, because you still have some kind of caffeine. So you don't want to get, excuse me, the opposite effect of what you're looking for. In this study that 9 international studies compiled by Dr. Lenore Arab at the UCLA School of Medicine, it was involving 5 countries, and it shows that an average of 21% reduction in strokes when participants drank 3 or more cups of tea each day. One disclaimer though, in general, the cup of teas that are in studies are smaller than the big bugs that we have in the United States. So just think about maybe a 6 to 8 ounce of container, right? Then tea, a healthy lifestyle. So I took this this definition according to WHO, World Health Organization. The definition of health is a combination of 3 elements. And that's what I was, again, telling you a little bit before. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. When you look at tea, it's not only the drinking, but we generally have some kind of socialization with it. So you have the health benefits of the tea plant with it. There's the mental aspect. We are, and after 2 years of COVID, I think everybody realized how much connected we are with each other and how much we need connection from each other. And somehow tea has this kind of healing, just to offering a cup of tea to someone if they're coming, or come and have a cup of tea with me. And we don't necessarily have to talk. In fact, in a lot of Asian culture, the way they actually share tea is mostly silent. It's more like body language and just being with each other and appreciate the brew. So think about it as you're thinking about, hey, how I can install that more of those kind of tea habits or tea ritual, whatever you want to call it, in my life. When is a good time in the day to do so? When I do want to do it alone, to be just with myself, I want to do it with friends, so that it's also a social part of my life. I picked a few tea rituals here that I like to share because they're similar but different at the same time, and that can give you an idea how to implement yours. But also because for me they show you different way to prepare the tea itself. And I wanted also to go back to history a little bit, right, to see how in China they actually use it. So in China, the typical way, traditional way, I guess, to prepare tea is called the gongfu sha. And it's like time and effort. And the tea master will first determine what is the appropriate temperature for the tea being used in order to extract the essential oils of the tea, right? And I explained that before, so that's really important. An optimal temperature must be reached and maintained, and the water temperature depends on the type of tea used, which also so you might see, I'm going to describe a little bit all what it is here. Those little containers that you see are actually for us inhaling the aroma of the tea. Basically, normally you actually, and I'll explain you how everything is prepared here. One thing you have to know is that Chinese are really picky when they actually prepare tea for their host, and they want to make sure everybody has the same brew. So that's why you have so many different teaware on this tray, right? The first thing that you can notice here, it's way smaller than our. If you were to my tea shop, I will show you the difference. I have many, but this is much this compared. That's what? That's 10 ounce or 16 ounce. This one. Generally they're clay pots and they're called yijin pots, and there's this small size like that. So they would probably say it's about maybe a 6 ounce pot. The way they actually prepare tea, the ratio water versus tea leaves is actually much different than when we do it Western way. So you have more tea leaves in these teapots and less water, of course, because the container, which allows them also to do severe steeping. And there is a reason why. It's like wine, if you think there, but you will get different notes every time you re-steep your tea. So why I said they're picky and they want to have the same brew, because they want to make sure everybody have the same quality of brewing, right? You don't want to have an over steep brew. So this little pitcher that you see here, sometimes you will see glass pitcher or the type of pitcher, depending on the color of the teaware itself. But they will brew the tea here. And generally the brewing is much shorter than for the way we do it. It's between 30 seconds, 20 seconds, or maybe a minute sometimes, depending on the type of tea they are brewing. They will, once the brewing time is over, they will actually pour it into the pitcher, and then they will pour it in all those ones that are for the nose, and then they will be served in the teacup. Teacups are also much smaller than ours. One thing that I forgot to also mention before before even doing that is that they will warm up all their teaware before. So they pour hot water all over the trays before. So that's a way to actually warm up the cups so that your tea will stay hot longer. And that's why these trays, it's hard to see here, but you can see how it's open. So there is a reservoir inside the tray where the water is recovered, basically. One thing that you don't see here, well, you have all the utensils here, because depending on the tea that you're using, you might need, like if you are actually doing you're going to prepare a puer tea or that is in brick, you'll need to have a bamboo utensil that help cut it in a way that it doesn't break the leaves too much. You have a scoop, so to scoop the tea. You generally use also a really small weight scale, so you can weigh the leaf, so you have the right ratio. And what's missing here that you all often have in the Gongfu Sha is what we call a teapot. A teapot is a little figurine that can generally is an animal, but it can be a plant. It depends. Now it's a little bit more modernized in some ways, and there is different explanation on it. What one of friend was telling me, but I think it's more a joke really rather than being totally the reason of having the teapot. But for me, it's more a connection to nature. But they were saying if you're having tea alone, well, you have a friend. So, and I may have a teapot downstairs, so I'll bring it later when we're doing the question and answers. So what I do really like about this particular way of brewing tea is that if you have, especially I would say non-scented teas, you're gonna be able really to get the notes brewing after brewing. From a spiritual aspect, you have to pay attention because everything is short time to steep, so you really have to be present and in the moment. It's something you share with, you can do it alone, and you can do that as a meditation practice. Like there is a way that just through your breathing and the amount of inhale and exhale that you're doing, you'll know when the tea is actually finished to brew. Excuse me. So that's a great way if you want to introduce to yourself as being trying meditation in a more I would say ludic, like joyful, maybe less overwhelming. When we start meditation first, it's like, oh, do I have to sit for that time? With having the tea itself as an help to meditation, it's a great way to do it. And it helps develop and I'd say and develop your palate. Excuse me. 1 second. The other thing, we talk about cultural difference. In Asian countries, not only when you drink tea, but when in the tea industry, when actually you do taste tea, you're going to slurp tea. Like basically, I know in our countries, we think it's a bad education, but actually it has an effect, literal effect, physical effect in us, and it helps. But when you slurp tea, It helps, one, reducing the heat of the tea in your mouth, but also when you slurp, there is like, if you have done yoga and everything, your tongue's gonna touch your palate, which help with the oh gosh, I'm not the it's the gland that it helps that activate the nervous system. Sorry, I just can't find the word right now, but I will in a minute. So it also again adds something regarding the part of how it can affect directly your nervous system. Now let's go to Japan and talk about how they prepare tea. So there's this one that I really picked is the how to prepare matcha, right? But they also do prepare, and I'm going to show you, because I should have. They also prepare, you know, in Japan, they're really good at doing green tea, especially steamed. And they use, if they do steep tea in a more, and don't do matcha, they use like to prepare sencha. It's called sencha steeping method, for instance. And I'm gonna see if I can see my screen so I can show you directly. Sorry. All right. Okay. So I hope you can see, but you see it looks like more a teapot, right? But it's a tiny bit different. The handle is generally on the right or left. And that would be for steeping green teas. Compared to this one that I'm actually picked right now, and the reason why I picked it is because the matcha ceremony, there's different level depending on what it is for. If it's for a wedding, if it's going to be something a bit less formal. But at the end of the day, there is a lot of codes. Sorry. And I'm going to read that to you because I like the way they explain. There are actually 7 rules of the Shanoyu, Shanoyu ceremony that was set by Senro Rikyu. So the 7 rules set by Senro Rikyu present in the form of statements. Excuse me, I don't know. Accompanied by simple illustrations. The procedures that must be respected during the Shanoyu ceremony. At first glance, they seem easy to follow, but once the underlying essence of each one is understood, it becomes apparent that they require total personal involvement, as well as paying close attention to the needs of one guest. And that's something that I think is fascinating about this ceremony. I really love it. Everything is attention to the guest. The bowl, and I'll talk about the bowl in a second. The picture you see on the right are from a friend of mine. She's actually from Japan, and she taught me to do the basic on how just to prepare my matcha. But so first of all, on the 7 rules, you have arrange the flowers as they grow in the fields. Flowers should be arranged in such a way as to suggest nature in all its simplicity. Then the second is arrange the charcoal to heat the water. This statement refers to the effort, the ability, and the sincerity that the host must devote to this preparation. So it's really, I mean, in fact, to become a Japanese tea master, it takes a long time. For this ceremony, I'm talking for the Shanoyu ceremony. In summer, evoke coolness. So everything must be done to make guests feel comfortable, including adapting the environment to the mood of the season, which is also really interesting. I have one of the bowls I asked my friend actually Natsuko to bring, and the one that I had, depending on the design, I could see that it was representing spring. So because there was bamboo and all that. So each detail of this ceremony would also invoke the season they are preparing the tea in. In winter, evoke warmth, then take care of everything ahead of time. Every detail must be carefully planned. Be prepared for rain. The host must be prepared for all eventualities. And give every one of your guests your full attention. I think it's one other thing that, so shanoyu, just for you to know, literally means water for tea. There are two principal methods of presenting shanoyu. There is the shaji or shakai and shakai methods. So the shaji is the more formal of the two and lasts about 3 to 4 hours and includes a maximum of 4 participants. In fact, in Loose Park, for the one who are local, there is a little Japanese house where you can actually hire a tea master and you can have the Japanese ceremony. The guests are first received with great ceremony in the garden before being invited to a meal for the kaisaki in the tea house. Also, one thing, and I can continue on and on, but I know that I still have a few things that I want to cover before for other cultures. The one thing also, I said that depending on the eventuality, the ceremony will be a bit different from formal to less formal. And that's going to impact also the type of matcha grade that you will have. There is some matcha is going to be thicker and some is going to be thinner in texture, just for you to know. And the grade generally for high quality, you want to find ceremonial grade. I'm sure you've seen if you're a matcha drinker. Now I wanted to share this other one because if matcha, chai, or what is masala chai actually, which means spicy, you can find it now in every coffee shop, pretty much, right? And it's a tradition throughout India. And it says that you have as much masala chai recipes as you have family. And I really truly believe that. If you think about it, it's just a balance of different spices. So talking about culture, again, you go in every street in India, you have those small little cart where they are actually preparing the masala in front of you. Masala chai takes about 30 minutes to actually to brew, depending on the mix of spices. From a health standpoint, I really recommend, especially in the winter, to drink a masala chai because it has anti-inflammatory. It also have it helps with fighting cold and flu because it has cloves and it has pepper, which are really good for your immune system. So a good one to do right now. In fact, what I really like about the masala chai is originally you didn't put tea leaves in it. The tea leaves came, and I talked about that in the history, came when the British started to actually grow tea in the 1700s. So if you are sensitive to caffeine, then you can make it without the tea, but you will still have the nice energy. Last one that I wanted to cover is Moroccan tea. That if you're not familiar with it, is the base of the Moroccan tea is made with green tea. It's called gunpowder. It's a type of green tea that is a bit raw, maybe have a toasty taste. And it's made with fresh meat and sugar. As you can see, generally, they use the teaware is generally the type of teaware that you see in the picture, which is can be stainless steel. Some are copper sometimes. It's really good actually for the meat too. That's why they use this type of teaware, because the type of teaware you use also have an effect on the flavor, the notes. This is, for instance, you don't want to use rare teas for a stainless steel one because it's gonna probably burn the tea leaves because it keeps it hot. Again, why I picked the Moroccan tea, same thing. If you, my best friend, and I have a good friend from Morocco, same thing. The first thing they will invite you, and even not only at home, but in the Orient, they will talk business over tea, like we do over coffee sometimes. So a lot of decision making has done over tea too. So again, the sociology is a social aspect of it. To finish, I wanted to kind of recap a little bit about one thing. Or one thing that I forgot to say is, since 99% of what makes tea is water, you need to have a good water, which means you need to have at least filtered water, because as you know, a lot of the tap water are treated and not with all good stuff. And you can use also spring water, or you can use mountain water, as I explained before. Just make sure that you want a water that is neutral in the taste, so that you can enjoy the aroma and the notes of your tea itself. So to finish a bit our class and to allow a little bit of question and answer, I'd say if you want to install a kind of a ritual at home, think about a few things that sound maybe logical for some, and always find a time in the day where you will be mindful. Think about a time of the day where you think you can install this ritual alone or with a friend, and you can have two types, one with friends that are completely different settings and one for yourself. One important thing is I always recommend that you are in a space that is decluttered, because if it's cluttered, that clutter your mind too. So think about those things. Simplicity, and it's all what is actually represented in Asian culture. It's always about being simple rather than too many things. Then take the time to prepare it proper way, right? So the right water, temperature, steeping time, and especially one thing that I add is think about breathing as you do that. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed the class, and I'm all about answering all the questions you have.
Thank you so much, for Emily. This was wonderful. And I forgot to mention at the beginning, if you have any other questions you kind of think of later on, or you would like to purchase some tea, Emily has a tea shop in Waldo. I think it's 89th and Warnell, right?
81st Terrace and Walnut.
81st Terrace and Warnell. You can also Google Emily's French Tea, and she's opened on Saturdays and Sundays as well, and also sells tea online. So, I have some questions here for you. Somebody is asking how adding sugar, and last time somebody asked milk, how does it affect the taste of sugar, taste of the tea?
So there are teas, certain type of black teas, and even certain type of green teas. In fact, in Pakistan, they do a similar type of masala, which with the milk makes the tea look pink. So the milk can balance acidity or astringency of certain teas. So that's what can do it. I personally don't drink tea, don't add milk in a lot of teas. There are teas that really help and will help to balance that, and I think that works perfectly. It really depends on the type of tea. So as for sugar, again, I'm not against sugar, but sugar is sweetness, no, right? So sometimes I feel that a lot of people don't always know how to prepare tea. So they use tea that, whether they're really astringent or the quality make it really strong. So sugar will add some kind of, will balance that out. I would say that for most of the tea that I carry and everything, I really don't recommend sugar. Now I would say at the end of the day, it's your personal decision. because as you know, sugar can also be addictive. So you don't want to counteract all the good benefits of the tea while adding a lot of sugar. That's my own personal opinion. That's not something that, I know that there are cultures, and actually in the United States, sweet tea is a culture, is a tea culture, and nothing wrong about it, but sometimes you may lose a little bit of the notes of the tea itself when you do that, right? I hope I answered the question.
So another question was about kind of what is your favorite tea?
That's a hard one. But I always answer my client that it depends on my mood. And it's really true. I can tell you. So if it's raining and dark outside, I love a good Japanese game match. I like this comfortness of a green tea, but with this kind of pop fries that maybe I have some memory from my childhood somehow, because that's what I say also, that's scent. It's also something that goes back, what are the good memories you had, things like that. And then in the morning, I do enjoy a nice black tea. It can be a single estate Darjeeling, or it can be if I feel that I need a little bit more uplift mood. A lot of people don't realize they like Earl Grey because bergamot, one thing of bergamot, it's a mood uplifting. And I really enjoyed a nice Earl Grey. Really, yeah, it really, I have a wide variety of liking teas, so I don't have one in particular.
Oh, very good. I think all of us who kind of dove in to the tea world know that, it's kind of like it kind of changes. Like we are craving different food, different time of the year, we are craving different tea. And if I may, I found I have this Yixing Paderi cup in my office because I kind of have a little tea addiction station here. So this is the Yixing pod. They are very tiny. And those are the ones which you pour the hot water over, Emilie was mentioning. So, and there is one Japanese pot which is much bigger, but not as big as our Western teapots. And I also have a tiny bitty cup someplace, but I cannot find it right now. So those are some of the cups I mean teapots I have in my office. Are there any other questions? Please write them in the chat room. We have a couple more minutes. There was an earlier question, if you know if coffee has the same health benefits as tea, and we kind of hashed it out at the end, so maybe we should have a different class on coffee. But if you personally know anything about coffee, if you wanted to share with us.
So coffee has health benefits as well, but it does have different health benefits. Like I said before, when it comes to caffeine, coffee is more an excitant that is a stimulant. The one thing that I know more on I will give you a good side and a less side effect. So the good side, I know it helps. So it has some effect with the brain too. It helps with headaches. I've heard that quite a few, and there are studies about it. The thing that is, I would say, less of a good effect is also for a lot of people, it can give acid reflux because coffee per se as a plant has acidity. So for people who likes coffee, I would recommend to make sure to eat something with it so that will actually balance the acidity of the coffee itself. But I do not have as much knowledge on the coffee because I'm going to be totally honest. I love the smell of coffee, but I don't like the taste.
I think I'm in the same category.
But I'm sure in town we have some great coffee people that could give a great class
Yeah,
for
that's what I said. If you have some ideas for classes, please bring them over. I shared my email address in the chat room, so feel free to email me. Also, somebody asked when we were talking about adding milk and sugar to the tea, they asked if adding lemon changes any of the properties, healing benefits, or such of the tea.
Well, lemon is good for digestion, but also have acidity. So it can be, for some people, can be acidic. It will definitely change sometimes even the color of the tea itself, but it's going to change the taste of it for sure. it it can have a good effect. I know a lot in Great Britain sometimes they do, and in other countries sometimes they add either a slice of lemon, or I know sometimes in Russia they add a slice of orange as well.
Mhm.
So there are some benefits because fruit, lemon gosh, and orange are citrus and they have health benefits as well. It really would depend on the type of tea that you're doing.
Mhm. All right. Well, thank you very much. It's 101. I don't want to get anybody in trouble for taking too long of a lunch. Well, thank you so much, Emily, again. Thank you for having us. We learned a lot, and thank you for your time.